And how can guys on the team or coaches be aware that that's happening? Every team is different, but you got to cut those tumbleweeds before they get close to the house. And if it gets close to the house, then the whole team or the whole farm is in trouble. And so it takes one guy or two guys to be aware of that and snip it. But if you don't snip it, then conflict's going to happen on every team. But, real leadership is handling conflict. And so how can you handle conflict as a leader? And well, that's going to dictate wins and losses, whether you want it to or not. It is. Every team has conflict, the best teams and the worst teams, and so how can you as a player be aware of conflict that's happening on your team and kind of try to address it before, even if you might not be liked? You changed. Oh, you're different. No, I just want to win, man. I just want to win.
Right.
That's it. Like, you like losing? I don't. So we either address this now or we keep losing.
You are listening to the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast, transforming athletes into leaders on and off the court with host Coach Furtado. Coaches, are you ready to take your passion for coaching and turn it into a full-time career? I know the challenges firsthand, but the Make Money Coaching Sports program helped me take BTG basketball full-time. If you're tired of juggling coaching part-time and want to fully focus on doing what you love, this business accelerator will give you the tools and support to make it happen. Hit the link in the show notes below to learn more and start living your dream. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast. I have a great guest for you today who is not going to sugarcoat anything. He's going to tell you the truth, just like he tells his athletes. We got Nick Deragis, leadership coach and hitting advisor, director and founder of Lead to Be. Nick is a public speaker, mentor, coach, and advisor who works on and off the field with pros to high-level amateur student athletes. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that intro. That was great.
Good stuff. Yes, sir. So let's dive right in. I want to talk about, before we talk about your coaching in life, now that you're making an impact on kids beyond the scoreboard, I want to talk about how baseball and maybe even a couple other sports had an impact on your life beyond the scoreboard.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great question. I think I was just talking to someone yesterday and playing multiple sports growing up, and then just the ability to be with a small group of kids and win, I think is very important. And I was blessed, like my whole life. I was with, pretty much my best friends, Jordy and Colby. We played multiple sports together, and we were just able to, have great guidance growing up. And, winning was a big part of shaping us into the, the students that we were, the athletes that we were, the friends that we were, the brothers that we were, the sons that we were. And I just think that sports played a huge part of my life from when I was at a very young age, just learning principles on the field that, you only really get unless you're in those environments on the field. And I was blessed enough to play, football, basketball, baseball in high school and finish high school playing football and baseball at a very prestigious high level school and able to win, championships and just be around great guys and coaches. Some of them are, from anywhere from, the GM or the Raiders to recruiting coordinators in college. Some of my buddies that I played football with are in the NFL, and then, some MLB guys. And I've just been lucky to be around high level guys my whole life to really see what excellence is from a young age. And, those principles, they never really leave you. So I played baseball through college and was very lucky to, I was started at Texas State and went back to a junior college and then went out to University of Rhode Island and finished up. I'm blessed and I'm grateful that I had opportunities to do multiple sports, be around great people. And it's really helped me just curate the person and I guess the mentor and coach I am today.
No, and one of the things that I love that I hear you is you're talking about winning shaped you. And I feel like you're talking about excellence. You're talking about great people. Now, of course, in order to win, you have to have talent. But I feel like in order to be a championship team, in order to be great, you have to have some character skills. What are some of those character skills you learned from the guys and mentors around you that help shape who you are?
That's a great question. Just like little examples. I mean, integrity in your work, right? And, are you going to shortcut stuff? Are you going to show up late? And then if you are showing up late, are your teammates holding you accountable? It's not necessarily always your coaches that need to be on you. Hey, you're going to run or punishment. No. The players should actually be the ones that are like, hey, you didn't touch the line. Like we can use that as an example. Like if you ain't touching the line, it's all good. It's not hurting anyone. It's just hurting your mindset and your preparation into are you going to be in better shape than the other team during the game, right? Like that's more of the principle that like a small principle or just teamwork, little stuff like if someone comes off the court or someone comes off the field, they didn't have a great at bat or they missed 2 free throws or whatever it is, you're gonna just be like, gosh dang man, why'd you do that? Or are you gonna be like, hey, that's not you, I know that's not you, that's not you, next at bat and next free throws, hey, next time you get back in the game, like go do your thing, be who you are. Little stuff like that. It's just you can't really teach those things unless you're shown, how to do that, or you're instilled with these subconscious, thoughts right when it happens to be able to go execute it and help pick your teammate up at that time. So little stuff like that. And it relates to business too. It's like, hey, someone didn't have a great day or whatever it is, or someone got off the phone call, they didn't do great, whatever it is, or they didn't perform well in a presentation or in a meeting. How can you still use those principles that I learned back then to help pick that person up on your team in business, or on the field? So it's just, there's such tangible principles that are, again, I learned at a young age that I'm able to instill now.
100%. So that next play mentality is kind of what you're talking about. And I feel like it's more important in baseball than almost any other sport. Cause like we were talking about, we all know that if you're a baseball fan, if you hit 3 for 10, you're a Hall of Famer, right? So that means you're failing 7 times, which is insane. So can you talk about how you teach your athletes that next play mentality, and also for pitchers, right? If they have we were talking about yesterday or the day before, how if you have a rough outing and you're only pitching 1 time a week, well, if you have a rough outing, you may not be pitching for another couple of weeks. So how do you mentally, bounce back?
Yeah, no, that's really good stuff, really good points. I mean, those are all difficult, and each guy has their own, mentality that they bring into some of this stuff. Having good guys around you that are able to pick you up, if let's say, you're a pitcher and you have a bad outing and you might not go back and, or even in basketball, like you might have 4 turnovers, the coach like completely lose faith in you. He's like, hey, well, what can you do in practice to show that you may have overcome? Hey, if you're a pitcher, you're gonna see, guys on your own team throughout that week to get these guys at bats. How can you not be disappointed or hard on yourself, but understand, hey, that wasn't you. Let's make sure that we're showing coach and my teammates that they can trust me on the mound when I get the ball in the 6th to 7th inning with the bases loaded. Or, okay, there's a team doing a press. You had 4 turnovers the game before, but in practice, when we do the press break, you're the guard that gets the ball. You want the ball, you get it to the middle, whatever you got to do, and you can break the press. And you're showing your coach and your teammates that, hey, they can trust you again, even though you may have had 1, 2, 3, bad outings or 2 bad, games in a row with multiple turnovers. I just think, again, it's the preparation and the work and building trust amongst, building trust in yourself and knowing, like you said, the whole failure thing in baseball is really big. And, a lot of the time in baseball specifically, people talk about, how to overcome failure, but you also need to study and understand what made you successful. And I don't think enough times nowadays people celebrate their small wins. It's more focused on the failure instead of understanding, hey, what did I do to succeed there? Let's actually focus on that one. One of my biggest mentors is always like, surfing's really relatable. You might go out on, to surf for 2, 3, 4 hours and you might catch 1 or 2 good waves. That's it. But you didn't think about times that you didn't catch the waves. When you got back and you tell your friends or you tell your fam, like, hey, I caught that 1 good wave, and you ride that whole wave for the rest of the day or the week, right? So that's celebrating your win, that's celebrating your success. But right now in sports, and a lot of the times, it's just like, hey, how do we overcome failure? But also at the same token, it's important to really celebrate the success that you had and what did you do in those moments that made you successful, and how much can you replicate that over and over and over again. So I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Because what gets celebrated gets repeated too. And that's something that I feel like as a coach, I really try and emulate and talk about. Is like, I feel like sometimes as coaches, we can be like, okay, you did your job, so like I don't need to, give you praise or whatever. But in reality, if you want something to be repeated, you need to celebrate that athlete, right? Like, I saw you struck out in the 1st inning and then you went opposite field through the 4-hole in the 2nd inning. Like, I see you, like, way to respond. And then that's an opportunity for that athlete to be like, okay, so coach sees me and sees my response. And so being able to recognize that and then teaching like your athletes how to do that as well.
100%. I mean, how do okay, what was different in your first at bat than your second at bat? Did you have a different approach? What made you, stay through that ball in the 4 hole or whatever it is? Okay, remembering that, not what were you thinking in the first one? Okay, let's throw that one out the window. Bop, bop. That's out. Okay, let's focus on what you did to actually be successful. I think that's a really good point. That's big.
It's huge, and I feel like that's like the art of coaching. And so right now, like I was telling you before, right, my art is we're getting smacked by some of these teams, and we're having so many opportunities for learning ops, but it's still my responsibility to find those little hidden gems within there. And then so when we play today, right, and we don't turn the ball over 42 times, and maybe we turn it over 25 times, to like, as much as that still pains me to say out loud.
Yeah. No.
But it's progress. Like, and that's what I tell them all the time. I'm like, let's go make progress. Let's go be better this quarter. Let's go. And that for me, like, I'm a high school coach. I'm not going to get fired over wins and losses. So it's a little different if you're a professional coach. But when we're in the youth development world, like, our job is to help our kids get better each day, right? Whether it's a practice or a game.
I agree. I mean, you said progress and like little wins over and over, and celebrating those little wins, it's compounding, right? Like the same mentor I just mentioned talks about, he talks about the compounding interests of just wins over and over. And, inside of each, if you're at a 2 and you're trying to get to a 10, right? It's not going to come overnight, but each win, if you focus on each day, there's an infinite amount of numbers that make up an infinite amount of fractions that make up the whole number, right? So by the time you're just so focused on getting to a 2 or a 3, you're not even worried about those numbers. You're just worried about the work in each day. And then over time you look up and you're at a 5 from a 2, and you didn't even realize because you were so focused on that work in each day. And then the infinite amount of fractions that you built over time ended up compounding over in large numbers. And I think that's just that's huge. I mean, it's a hard concept to embrace, obviously, but just understanding that that's how this works, it's critical, and inside of just progressing day by day and week by week and month by month. And then you look up and you're like, dang, I got a lot better. We got a lot better as a team. If you can collectively bring a whole team to adapt that, like you're talking about, it's foundational.
Especially for young people, right? Because they're on social media. They see success. Is not everything on their timelines is either success or maybe it's like the little bloopers, right? The worst of the worst. So there's not a lot of reality that they're seeing daily. Like, I don't know what it's like for baseball players and kids these days, but these kids they'll talk about how many points they scored and yada, yada, yada. And they talk about their rankings and a ton of stuff that really doesn't matter. Like, and most college coaches don't even care about. I'm like, did you make the right play?
They don't.
If you scored 12 points, were you efficient at scoring those 12 points? Did you hit the open player when they were open, or were you selfish and decided to shoot and you kind of got lucky that the ball went in? So
100. And like, hey, did you have 4 turnovers and 4 points? All right, well, your plus to minus is down anyway now, regardless.
Right.
So you're not even as valuable as it looks on paper. And you said about the rankings, that stuff's just, it's out of control right now. And a lot of the platforms that use these specific metrics to rank these guys or whatever they are to star these guys, it ain't what the college coaches are looking for anyway. So it's almost like a whole facade that's built into this recruiting process that we don't even that you don't even understand or know unless you've been to those, you talk to the recruiting coordinators, you talk to the scouts on actually what's going on and what are they looking for. And all these platforms are just selling something that don't have to do with what they're actually looking for. And so the rankings, it's just like a whole facade. And it's tough. Again, there's no transparency in it, and it's a big deal because it's not the kids' fault. It's not the students or the athletes' faults. It's just the nature of the beast and what we're in. It is a business, and so these platforms are going to do what they do to need to make money, but it's just it doesn't help the kids for where they're at now.
No, look at all the 5-star recruits in every single sport who either they flop in college or eventually they'll flop in professional sports. It's just like so many top picks, and like, I feel like the stars don't account for the mental approach that is what is required of a professional or a collegiate athlete.
If anything, it hurts, right? Like, there's pressure to being a 5-star. There's pressure to being highly recruited. There's pressure with you going to an SEC school. Every time you step on the field, there's expectations. Okay, now in certain sports, you have more than expectations. You have actually fulfillment on whether it's monetarily or whether it's promises or whatever it is, that it builds pressure on a kid. And when you have enough pressure just to go in and perform to help you and your team win, and then you have external pressure that doesn't have anything to do with you actually in that moment during those games, it's a big, big deal. And how's a 16, 17, 18, shoot 22-year-old supposed to understand the difference in those pressures? It's not easy at all. Not easy at all.
No, it's not. You're working with high level athletes now. And so, with that being said, what do you feel like are some of the biggest separators from those who thrive under that pressure or embrace the pressure and succeed versus those who fail?
It's a good question. I think we kind of talked about it earlier, like intention in your work or integrity in your work and how prepared you are. If you're prepared, the pressure is going to feel a lot less. If you're not prepared, it's going to feel like real pressure. And I think just preparing yourself, not just expecting you to go out and showcase your talents. Well, guess what? On the other side of the floor, the other side of the field, there's guys that are just as talented as you, if not as talented, almost as talented. But if they're prepared, they understand, they watch film, they understand your key points and where you like to shoot the rock and where you get all your points from, or baseball wise, if they have those pitches and they understand your out pitch, they understand what pitch you're trying to get ahead with, whatever it is. Well, if you're prepared, they're not going to look like a 5-star. And that's where, for me right now, I think the name on the back of the jersey and the accolades, it's in those moments and in those games, like in preparation for them, they need to be irrelevant. It's not necessarily about their name or where they're going. It's about what they actually do on the floor and who they are on the floor, not who they are on social media, right? And if you can take that to understand, hey, we're going to prepare for who he is on the floor, not who people say he is, it changes everything. It changes the mindset that you go about it. And I think just, again, preparation, is equivalent to your performance regardless. And the preparation relieves pressure. And when you have preparation that relieves pressure, then you can go perform. And that's ultimately, I think, for young guys, is how can you prepare, and unless you're shown preparation, the way to prepare, like unless you're shown, hey, these guys are these 4 inbound plays, or hey, this is the press they bring out in the late in the first quarter, and then they bring it out again in the third quarter. And then, you see it on film, and then you go practice it and execute it as a team. Well, then you're going to be more prepared. And things look easier to you. And so I just think preparation in the detail in the preparation goes such a far way, but unless you really know what true preparation is, it's hard to even know what to do. And that's where I think, people like us are so important in guiding and in coaching and showing what true preparation looks like and what it takes to actually prepare and able to perform.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can't come into a game not understanding, especially as you go into higher levels, right? At the youth levels, you may not be able to watch some of the film or some of the pitchers or the teams you're playing against. But how can you prepare to be your best self when you step on the field? And I feel like that's our job as coaches, right? A lot of them are young. They don't understand. I'm working with 9th and 10th graders. They're just getting exposed to high level basketball. They're going from middle school basketball to high school basketball, middle school baseball to high school baseball. It's different, right? It's really different. The levels, even from JV to varsity, that leap, right? So how are you going to prepare? How are you going to play calm when you are pressured with the ball, right? Are you visualizing yourself? Is that something you're doing? Are you making sure you're putting in the work where, like you're handling pressure in practice or on your own training times? Are you working on your handles on your own time? Are you working on going away in the baseball in playing baseball? Are you able to hit the curveball on the first pitch as well? Are you able to kind of adapt, right? Are you adaptable? And so a lot of that comes with failure, right? And so you're going to get your butt kicked, and that's part of it. Now, how are we going to learn and respond and use those getting our butt kicked and striking out and getting shelled if you're a pitcher to actually improve and become a better player? I feel like that's the separator from where you can, stay in the same place if you never decide to learn, improve, and grow, or you can continue to decide, okay, I'm going to learn from this opportunity and keep getting better.
100%. And I think, like what we talked about before, is the people around you is so important, because unless you play at a certain game speed, right, the game speeds up when you're in those moments in the games, regardless, it's just, people in the stands, or, pressure in the game, whether it's a conference game or you're playing a team or whatever it is that's better, or, better on paper. But how can, the people around you are going to help make those things happen? Like, if you're practicing at, 70%, well, then the game you're going to feel like you have to go 110%. But if you practice at 95 or 100%, then in the games it feels like you're going 80. And so it's like, okay, cool. How can the people around you during practice go as hard as they can so it's game like? And if you can do that, then everyone gets better, and it uplifts everyone, and everyone becomes more of an excelled, more adaptable to an excelled speed in the game. But if everyone's just practicing lackadaisical, it's like, no, 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 that ain't going to work, because then you're going to get in the game. It's going to be sped up on you. And unless you're exposed to what game speed should look like, they don't know. And so that's where it's like, they don't know. So it's like, that's where it's like up to us to say, hey, look, you have so much more in the tank. And if you do it, guess what? This guy's going to go a little harder. And then this guy's going to go a little harder too. And then you have 2-3 guys that go hard. And then guess what? You got 5 or 6 guys, because it's contagious. And so then you have a group of guys going together. Then the whole entire team and their practices in itself uplift. And now we're talking back like preparation. And then it's like, okay, we're going to go perform in the game, because all 6 of us, or 7 or 8 of us, right, understand what it's like to actually prepare hard with detail and excel each other. And I think that's like the biggest thing. It's just, who holds you accountable for that? Is it the players? Is it the coaches? Is it both of them together? But unless you're shown that, it's hard to really know what the standard is.
100%. No, it's all about competing. Like, as I can hear you, this is literally what I've been reiterating in practice, like for weeks now. So like, it's like you're kind of coming in. I almost need you to come in and talk to them yourself, so that way they don't know. I've had to be crazy. I'm really trying to get them to compete. Like, and I've been asking them, like, do you guys enjoy getting your ass kicked? Like, do you enjoy that? And they're like, no. I'm like, then show me. Right? Then show me you can go and compete. That's what it's all about. And I feel like that's why sometimes, and I don't know what club baseball is like, but with club basketball and just the kind of the basketball world, or I feel like it's a lot of sports now. It's like, there's always another game. And like, so kids feel like, oh, if I lose, there's another game. It's like, yes, there's another game, but you got to compete your butt off to go win this game right now, to go win this practice right now. And because at the end of the day, like, most of y'all aren't going to play college. And I'm going to tell you right now, men's recreation basketball leagues are not worth it. Not worth it, but it's not the same, right? Recreation softball, it's not the same, right? You are going to miss going to war with your brothers and your sisters. It's fun, right? It's fun. You got to love to compete. And so I feel like that's been honestly a lot of like my job this year, is teaching them how to compete. And I feel that's kind of what I hear you saying there.
And I think, again, that's the difference. In like, going back to the beginning of the first question you asked, I just got shown how to compete at a very early age. And I was very lucky. Like, even like little league championships or like whatever it is, those things add up. And then winning becomes a standard. And once winning becomes a standard, new guys that come into your team, especially if a core group of guys that understands what winning is, they have to adapt. If they don't, they get left behind. And the only issue, though, and that's why I say it needs to be a group, because if you just have one guy that wants to set the standard, then all the guys chirp him and laugh at him and say, "Oh, that guy's, you're a suck ass," or, you're the coach's favorite. And it's like, hey, it ain't easy to be a leader. You're not necessarily going to be liked, but just that one person needs to take that step. And then there's another person, then there's a third person. And then guess what? It's a standard. And the other guys fall behind. If you don't want to be here, guess what? We're going to do the work. And so, like, the competitive nature is so contagious. And the sooner that the guys can adapt it, it's just the better it is. But again, it's really, really hard to execute. It's easier said than done.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. One of the things I've been thinking about personally is like urgency to take action every single day. And I also think there's what I've learned as a coach is there's patience, that it doesn't, like, building a competitive, connected team takes time. And so, like, it's November, like, and we're in the preseason. We haven't played any league games. And so, and we've had, like, really realistically, like, 6 practices. So, like, how can I expect us to perform at our highest level? I can't. Like, that's unrealistic. And I also want to take urgency to get us rolling as soon as possible. So it's like
100.
that art
And I
that
think it takes one practice.
right.
It takes one practice to be like, shoot, like that's how it's supposed to feel. That's how it's supposed to look. Like we didn't even run that much this practice, but yo, we're all tired. Why? Because you went hard in every drill. You didn't have to wait for the coach to be like, here we go run. It's like, yo, no, like we're going to go hard every single day. And if you can go hard in every drill or every chapter of the practice go by quick. You
They
don't even
do.
know because they're like, shoot, that's how it's supposed to feel. Yeah. Now, can it be a new standard? And, you have trap days and you have days where it's like people are tired and stuff like that. But that's when it's on the players, to hold each other accountable. Like, hey, let's go. Come on. We need you. Like, we got 45 minutes left in this, John. Like, hey, you're the guard. You got the ball in your hands. Like, we need you to yell. We need you to communicate loud. Like in basketball, it's like a little, like my boy August, I tell you about, and I hope he can get on. He's really high level dude, but he talks about energy and tempo in basketball practices. And, like just clapping, for example, or just, upraising just noise in general, it brings energy and that energy is contagious. And so I try to really create that on the baseball field. Like I'm always saying stuff and I'm always clapping and people think I'm crazy, but hey, I have to do it as a coach until the players can do it and I don't have to do it
Yep.
anymore.
I know. Yep.
And so I tell these guys it's like, hey, have I done it enough now? Can you just take over for me?
Right.
But again, it's really up to them if they want to set the new standard for themselves and then the guys around them. But like we just can't always do it for them. We can show them, but we can't do it for them.
No, 100%. I feel like that's why I've been so exhausted because I've been having to consistently model that energy over and over. And yesterday before the game was like the first time I heard them really starting to talk to each other, starting to bring a little bit of that energy without me saying anything. So it's a step in the right direction. Even though we got our butt kicked, it's a step in the right direction. And so,
Amen.
obviously I have to continue to stay on them and continue to bring that energy and just teach them. And they do click, right? I had this one team that I was working with these kids. I'd coached them. I'd trained most of them before. A lot of them played for me for a high school season. They played on my club team, and it took them until like May. And I had started working with most of them like June in like the year before, and so it just took a long time. And I feel like it's like, obviously, even as coaches, we want to put our team in a microwave and have that popcorn popped and ready to go. But it's more like a crock pot meal where we have to give it tender, stir in that pot every single day for a long time. And so that's the joy of coaching. And when we're able to do that, like we're able to prepare these kids to be successful beyond the game. And that's what the purpose of it is.
No, it is. And like, again, it's just not, it's so, like you said, it's exhausting sometimes.
Yeah.
And, it's the nature of the beast. And sometimes you're more exhausted coaching than you were as a player. Like,
Yep.
it's just like, hey, if I was out there, I'd feel way more comfortable.
I know. I know. I could control it more. I feel like that's what I sometimes as a coach, like I don't control the game, and I've learned from myself that I'm a little bit of a control freak just in general. So I've had to kind of like do my best and like hands off.
It's so hard, and again, it's just you can only prepare them so much, but just us, showing them the standard of what it's like to prepare, it goes a long way. And it's on them to pick it up. And again, if one of them can pick it up, two of them pick it up, then next thing you know, you have five guys, and that's a new standard for the squad. It is exhausting and it's draining at times, especially just losses, man. Losses just drain you.
I know.
mean, even some wins, like and again, it's like, even I think one of the biggest things as coaches too, after a win, are you still, coaching like you lost? Celebrate the win for sure, but hey, we won by 4 runs, but we should have won by 11. Or we won by 7 points. We should have won by actually 20. There should have even never been a deficit in the game. Okay, there's an error here. We didn't hold these runners on. Next thing you know, they had 2 runs and we just gave them to them. We didn't have help side D. We didn't talk on the back screen and they got 2 easy layups. It's like that's just, we came out of the hole, but we were in a deficit that we didn't need to be in. And I think, it gets back to like, the principle we talked about, like that's excellence. Like, okay, you lost, but we still could have been better. And how, getting kids to understand that in itself is, even, young men and women, let's say, it's still very, very difficult to expand and execute, the topic of excellence, even after a loss or even after a win. I'm sorry. It's like, hey, we need to treat this like we lost because the next team we play ain't going to be like that. They were getting layups. Hey, this next team, it's going to be alley-oops, man. So unless you want to be on ball's life, you better figure it out. Ball is life on the other side where you're the one getting dunked on. I always say with these basketball, man. And one thing, too, I was going to say is like one of my football coaches, one of the best probably X's and O's guys I've ever been around, he said, never put anything on film you don't want other people to see. So it's like never put anything on film you don't want other people to see. So other teams, scouts, coaches. Now everything's recorded. You take one play off, there's a check. Oh, you play three plays off. Oh, well, you can't hit a breaker. Look at this. It's exposed now. Yeah, he's hitting 500, but he can't hit a breaker. So you're going to see 5 breaking pitches, my bro. That's it. The word's out. And when the word's out, it's out. People talk. And so, it's, again, hard for young athletes to understand, but gosh darn, the importance inside of that stuff is just it's on a whole nother level.
100%. And that it's preparing them for life, right? You got to be able to, use this as an opportunity to continue to prepare. And so I like what you're talking about with leadership in terms of influence. How have you done as a coach, like poured into, if you recognize like one athlete has maybe a little bit more influence on something than others, how do you make sure that you're having conversations to kind of get that standard or ripple effect so it's not just coming from the coach?
Oh, it's so tough, man. I think that's one of the toughest things about the generation that is in high school and college today, even pro, because you have guys become pro so early. But it's so tough because leadership's hard because leadership, you might not be liked, right? And how do you separate your relationship on the field or on the court from your teammates off the court? And I think that's one thing that's very, very difficult is you're so close with them outside the field. So you don't want to hold them accountable for when you're on the field or when you're on the court. But you saying one or two things to them is showing like, hey, your work isn't okay. I've had lengthy conversations. Like, for example, there's 2 years ago, we had a really good team. And, there's one guy that there's a lot of external factors, there's a lot of pro ball dads that are involved in the program and just a lot of students that go to the games and just a lot of people that are telling this one kid that he needs to be in a different spot in the lineup. And he's playing well and doing his thing. It's not his control where he hits in the lineup. And so I said, hey, look, we either can address this right now and you can address the team. And you can say, hey, all this other stuff, I don't want anyone else coming up to me. I don't want anyone else saying I need to hit in a different spot. I'm hitting here for a reason, and I'm going to continue to do my thing in this spot in the lineup. Okay? Because he doesn't know. If you go from the bottom of the order to the top of the order, you get pitched different. You might not have the same results. Okay? And it's an ego thing. Yeah, if you play kids on the other team, oh, he's hitting at the bottom of the lineup. Well, guess what? When I put one off the ball, does it even matter? So I said, hey, look, you have an opportunity to squash all this right now. You address the team and you say, hey, look, this is what we need to do. This is where I'm at. And I'm going to stay here because this is what's best for the team. And we were unable to do that. And it continued to fester. It's like the story of a burning bush, right? It starts on the fields. You have a big farm field and there's one tumbleweed that kind of catches on fire somehow. And then it catches another one. And then, it goes by the plants and the seeds and then it catches a third one and then boom, it lights the whole thing. But it's not close to the house yet. It's just on one part of the team, right? And then one other guy catches it. Now it's getting closer to the house. Well, if the whole house goes down, the whole farm explodes. And next thing you know, boom, then it catches a tree close to the house. And then that tree catches the house. And next thing you know, you have a whole fire on the whole entire team. And how can guys on the team or coaches be aware that that's happening? Every team is different, but you got to cut those tumbleweeds before they get close to the house. And if it gets close to the house, then the whole team or the whole farm is in trouble. And so it takes one guy or two guys to be aware of that and snip it. But if you don't snip it, then conflict's going to happen on every team. But, real leadership is handling conflict. And so how can you handle conflict as a leader? And well, that's going to dictate wins and losses, whether you want it to or not. It is. Every team has conflict, the best teams and the worst teams, and so how can you as a player be aware of conflict that's happening on your team and kind of try to address it before. Even if you might not be liked, you changed, oh, you're different. No, I just want to win, man. I just want to win.
Right.
That's it. Like, yo, you like losing? I don't. So we either address this now or we keep losing. You tell me.
Right. 100%. Yeah. No, and I've had this conversation with the current team that I have now. I'm like, look, we don't have to like each other. We just got to respect each other. Right. At the end of the day, you don't have to be best friends with everyone. You're not going to be best friends with everyone you work with after sports. It's not going to happen. So get over it. Be respectful of one another. If you want to clown each other a little bit, be my guest, but don't ever make it too personal. And if it is, then you don't have to play.
You said it's the respect thing and being liked is two completely separate things. And how I look at it is like, hey, look, if you win or you do things that people may not like, but you win, what are you going to be? You're going to be respected. And when you're respected, at the end of the day, are you liked? Yeah. So they essentially amount to the same thing, but it's hard to understand. It's like, okay, you want to be respected or you want to be liked? Well, most of the people that are liked, they don't win. Why? Because you get stepped on. But if you're someone that wins, you're respected. And typically when you're respected,
People like winners.
People like winners, and people like people they respect, regardless if they want to say it to them or not. And so it's just, this is the world of the competitive, this is the competitive world. And so that's like, this is good stuff. I mean, this is like, the nature of the beast of what we're in, especially, again, this generation, like before, like, when I was growing up, and it's easy to say that stuff, like, oh, we're growing up, and I like people say that, but like, it's just people fought on the teams. Like they could separate off the field and on the field. You could be, even with people we played against. It's like, yo, when we played against you, you're my best friend for 10 years, but dog, I'm gonna take your head off. And like, if you want to say something, it's all good. I got my guys right here that are behind me that are gonna take you. And if you don't got the same back on your team, we're gonna win the war, my boy. And but then you see him off the field, it's like, hey man, that was fun, dog. I'm gonna get you next time though. Whatever it is, it's just, it's hard to emulate that now because there's so much buddy, people from social media and people from there. It's less of like a real authentic, like, relationship here. And there's so many factors that go into it, but that's a huge thing in today's just world of sports.
100%. No, for sure. Like I feel like when I play, like, and if I play a buddy, right, I want to beat him bad, but like instead beat him more, right? Than if I'm playing someone I don't know, right? It's a lot more fun that way, right? And then we can still be friends off the court.
Yeah, hey, I always say this: you want to be chirped or you want to be the chirper, dog? Because if you lose, you're gonna get chirped. But if you win, you got a whole year to say whatever you want, dog. Whatever you want. Like my junior year, we were lucky enough to win a championship, and like we'd always just hold the ring up and say like, "Hey, what'd you say? I can't hear you."
Right.
It's like, dude, you can say whatever you want, dog. We got this. So it really doesn't matter. And so it's so relevant with all these schools around. You're around each other, you play club with each other, and you get into the school. It's like, dude, you want to let them chirp you for the whole summer? Dog, no. So it's just hard to embrace unless you've been through it, or that what it feels like to be on one side and the other. You got to be on both sides to understand what side you want to be on.
Yep. It's a choice. So I'm loving this conversation. For my last question, for the ninth inning, for the 2-minute warning, what would be your kind of final pieces of wisdom for the coaches and parents, and maybe even the athletes that are listening, to make an impact on those athletes to build that winning mentality that takes not only with them, while they play sports, but also beyond the game?
Good question. I mean, I could probably just use like a little example. Let's see here. I think just, what is in everyone's lifestyle is different. I think just, having a standard of work or being introduced to a standard of work or accountability. It's tough for parents because, they want what's best for you, but sometimes they don't know what's best for you. And so, a lot of it's just, hey, like it's going to be okay. Or, like, hey, they don't, they just don't understand necessarily always the work that it takes to be great, or they're not in these practices. They don't know the speed of the game that this kid plays at versus me. And it's like, no, mama, I have to go and run sprints every single day. every day, or I got to go to the court every single day, and I need to, you know, if you can't, and that's why I need to get a ride. And so every kind of relationship's different, but I think that just being there to support the athlete as much as you can and try to understand why they, they're communicating these ways, or try to understand, like, the dinner table talk is very it can be very unhealthy, or it can be very healthy. More nowadays and always, really, it's more unhealthy because the parents don't truly know what's going on in those practices, or in those programs. And so I think it's important for not the parents to necessarily tell them what to do, or give their opinion, but more so ask on, like, really what's happening, and just try to understand as much as you can, so that you can help give them guidance on how to approach inside the program, or when they talk to their coaches, or when they talk to their parents, or when they talk to their teachers, and just try to step back and have more of an objective approach. Because I know it's so much easier said than done, but it's hard to know as parents what's really going on. And so sometimes allowing the kids to give them an open floor to talk, as unsolicited feedback as you can give them, I think is really important. And we can go on. That's a loaded question. I'm not sure if I answered it too great, but there's a lot that goes on there. And I just think that, yeah, giving your kid the freedom to try to explain to you, and just because you think what's best for them doesn't necessarily what's best for them. And a lot of the time, it's can hurt them more, the dinner table talk, than help them. Like we talked about that example earlier, that's where a lot of it comes from. You have pro ball dads, or you have this and that, or just people at the school that think they know what's going on, but they don't. They're not in the conversations, the practices. So just trying to make sure you're supporting them from an objective environment, so they can share and not feel like they can't share with the parents as well. I think that's really important. It's just such a hard balance to find. So
yeah, no, it's an art, and I feel like that's a great place to leave this conversation off. And even as coaches, parents, and athletes is to listen a little bit more. Like, listen to your teammates, listen to your players, right? Listen to your sons or daughters, and ask those questions, and get to know them, instead of always just projecting, what's going on in your mind. So that's a great piece of wisdom.
Yeah, and it's a lot of the time you don't want the students and the athletes to feel like they can't share things. And it's also important, though, to coach them and how to have these conversations with the coaches or the players on your team, or the teachers. I think it's the ability to communicate as a young adult, and a student athlete, to your coaches, your principals, your athletic directors, your teachers. Those principles and those concepts can take you forever, but they have to go explore it themselves. Like, the parents can't have the conversations for them. The parents can coach them on how to have the conversations, but they can't have the conversations for them. And when they try, the more that they try, the more it hurts the kid. I think that's probably the best. That was probably what I should have said at the beginning, but I think that wraps it up well enough.
There we go. I love it. That's a great place to leave off on our conversation. Where can people find and connect with you on social media?
Yeah, social media. I think my Instagram is at Nick Deragis. Feel free to holler at me, whatever you got. And yeah, man, we can always hop back on too. I definitely want to get you on with August. Yeah, because I think this is really valuable. Yeah, I hope it gets to your audience and can relate to your audience as much as.
Absolutely. And I know you got a book coming out. Do you have a timeline on that, or we may have to find out about that a little bit later and plug it in the newsletter?
Oh, it's good. It's called just the shit with an asterisk I wish I knew in high school. A lot of these concepts that we talk about, a lot of these principles, just same thing. Things that I saw guys do that were successful, or things I wish I probably would have done, or I could have done better. Just a lot of these things we talk about. So I think whole thing's done. I'm trying to publish it, self-publish it right now on Amazon. It's been a whole deal. I've shopped it around with some agencies and stuff, but I think right now, I'm hoping, it was supposed to be January 2025, January 1st, but don't quote me on that. I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, so I'm trying to be better with that. But this thing's being written for a long time, so I'm hoping I can get it out as soon as I can.
Love it. We'll keep our eyes on it, and then make sure that we plug it out to our community. Appreciate your time today, Nick. We'll have to have you back sometime as well, because I know we got a couple hours left of our conversation.
Yeah, man, we could talk forever, but no, this is good stuff, man. I appreciate you having me on, and I love what you're doing on this pod. Obviously, I think it's really, really impactful, and I'm glad we can connect for a little bit, and yeah, just get to know each other better. I'm sure there will be a lot in the future that we can continue to wrap on, and so I appreciate you, man, and we'll talk to you soon.
Stuff.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with a friend, coach, or parent you feel like would get value from this episode. It's our responsibility to impact as many parents and coaches who are the ones that are impacting our athletes. That's how we create a ripple effect. So thank you for being a part of our community, and we look forward to serving you all next week.